Teachers. Hello, is my voice audible?
Yes, audible.
Okay. Good evening, all. Welcome to this COVID-19 awareness program. So, I welcome respected principals, teachers, my dear colleagues, friends, and students. So, as we all know, India is under COVID-19 tsunami. Precious lives are being lost, but lives could have been saved. With a little awareness, lives can still be saved from here on. Anukriti Foundation has taken this initiative with the sole intention of spreading awareness about the symptoms and progression of COVID-19 double mutant creating havoc in India. Based on AIMS guideline and with the help of a panel comprising COVID frontline doctors from esteemed hospitals like Delhi's BLK and Lucknow's Civil Hospital, they have created a path that can help families to prepare better and avoid escalations of this harmful disease. So today the presenter is Payal Madan, who is an ex-physics honor student from Hindu College, ex-MTech student from IIT Delhi, and at presently she is working in MNC in Bangalore from past decade. So at the end of this session, we will also have live question and answers with COVID frontline doctors who are present with us today. So now I hand over to Payal to start with her program that is on COVID-19 awareness. Welcome, Payal.
Thank you, Dr. Anjali Sharma. Good evening, all. Welcome to the COVID-19 awareness program. First and foremost, I would also like to thank the management and Dr. Anjali Sharma and especially Dr. Vanita Tuli for giving me this opportunity to connect with all teachers and staff. During COVID-19 crisis and grief that befell on my family, wherein we also lost few of our very important members. On the brighter side, we met these very kind doctors, Dr. Ruchir Taneja, Dr. Shelly Shell. While talking to them, we realized some key aspects of symptoms and progression of this highly contagious virus that are indeed beneficial to equip family to better handle this virus at a family level. In the collaboration with these doctors and with Ankurit Foundation, this awareness program is been created. At present, unfortunately, the Dr. Ruchi Sharma, Dr. Shelly Shell, and Dr. Amit Sharma at this moment are not present, but they would join us very soon. And we will have a live Q&A session at the end of my presentation. We all are aware of the current situation in India, this buildup of anxiety and stress. Everywhere people are worried, they are not aware of what is happening. And, there are stories on stories which are, which leave people all the more anxious and not knowing what is going on with the COVID-19. There is also broken and strained medical infrastructure. We were aware there is still a shortage of doctors, hospitals, and medicines. The pandemic was on an uprise just few days back, although it's on a downside at this point of time, but we don't know when and where it will peak again. There are a lot of talks of a third wave already going on. We have authentic information on social media, but it's all lost in unauthentic and false informations. So what is happening because of all of this? There are people who are dying, there are people who are severely sick and they're landing up in hospital. So the mission of this particular program is to save deaths with current guidance. And the purpose is to help people understand symptoms and progression of COVID-19 to avoid escalation of the disease and visit to hospitals. First and foremost, about the new double mutant, the known characteristics of the same. For most cases, the cycle lasts for roughly 14 days. The cycle is divided into two phases. RT-PCR is definitely a gold standard and it is very beneficial for the doctors to begin their medical treatment on the patient. However, this new double mutant dodges this RT-PCR on several occasions. There are two big reasons for doing that. One is the sampling error, because this test depends upon the sample collected from your throat and your nose. And there can be a lot of errors while doing that. The second bigger reason is because this new double mutant in itself, this particular mutant, it has been observed by the medical fraternity that this double mutant early in the cycle itself, it crosses your upper respiratory tract and settles into your lower respiratory tract, which is your lungs, very quickly, pretty much in the beginning of the cycle itself. So what happens is when somebody comes and collects your swab from nose and throat, they don't get any viruses sitting over there. So then the RT-PCR will show a false negative. So as I did mention in the earlier slide, there are two phases of COVID-19. We must clearly understand two phases of the COVID-19, and there's a detailed description of the same. On the phase one, which begins from day 1 up to day 7, we have some onset of symptoms such as fever, cough, cold, chest congestion, fatigue, diarrhea, constipation, tooth pain, rashes, headache, mouth ulcers, inflammation in tongue, mouth, and loss of taste and smell. Now, this particular list is pretty exhaustive in the sense that the patients definitely have one or few of these symptoms. But beyond that, on particular case-to-case basis, there have been more symptoms than these as well. However, they are not being recognized as a broader symptom, which I am actually elaborating at the moment. For high-risk patients are people who are above the age group of 60, people who have some kind of previous comorbidities. I shall explain this in upcoming slide in a further more detail. For high-risk patients, the symptoms also include dizziness, seizure, and fainting spells. Now, phase 2 of COVID-19 cycle, which begins from roughly 8th day up to the 14th day, there are two things that can happen. For 80 to 85% of people in India, the virus recedes. What happens here is the symptoms subsides. Person feels getting better. If you, for instance, started with cough and cold and probably fever, then probably your fever will get down at this particular stage. Your cough will start improving, and overall you'll start feeling better. Herein, we must understand the symptoms are subsiding and the patient is getting better. However, on the other 15%, 15 to 20% cases in India, what happens is the virus multiplies. This is where we need to be further cautious in our COVID-19 cycle. Herein, mysteriously, the symptoms may aggravate, they may add, something else would come up, or even subtract. But there's a key point in subtraction in here from the earlier phase of when the virus recedes. When the virus multiplies, a subtraction of one symptom can actually cause a addition or aggravation of the another symptoms. For instance, a person who began with fever and cough, the fever may drop eventually in their cycle, but the cough may keep increasing or may get aggravated. In these cases, we must understand that the patient is not getting better and the virus is multiplying in them. Now, for other patients at this point of time, in this particular phase, the SpO2, which is your oxygen saturation, also starts dropping. But this is not true for every other patient, for few. Now, I would like to emphasize a little more on the symptoms, and we, along with help of this doctor, we have created 3 buckets of symptoms, which the doctor actually thinks about when you tell them, this is the bucket which they categorize the patient into in their mind when, a person is describing what all they're feeling. For instance, a person who is showing mild fever means fever of 101 or less, or a person who has mild cough and congestion, somebody who has mild cold, fatigue, diarrhea, constipation, tooth pain, rashes, loss of smell and taste, and vomiting, headache, etc. These people, according to the doctor, are exhibiting mild symptoms. Herein, very key important point is that the oxygen saturation for these patients is always above 94%. For moderate symptoms, a patient may show a symptom like moderate to heavy congestion, lot of cough, a high grade fever, which is of a grade of greater than equal to 102, or SpO2 between 90 to 94. Now, I would like to emphasize on this particular point that a person may or may not have all of these symptoms. They may have only a high-grade fever and a minor cold and some fatigue. But that patient is particularly showing moderate symptoms. We must understand that they are exhibiting moderate symptoms. In certain cases, people just have SpO2 between 90 to 94%, and they have very minor symptoms, any other minor visible symptoms like minor cough or diarrhea. Even in that cases, we must understand that the patient is exhibiting moderate symptoms. Now, for high-risk patients, as I did mention a little earlier, high-risk patients, people who are above the age group of 60 and people who have some kind of comorbidities, the symptoms may also include dizziness, seizure, and fainting spell. By default, these particular symptoms for high-risk patients especially is categorized or bucketized in moderate symptom category. This is different from fatigue. A fatigue for a normal healthy person is a mild symptom, whereas for a high risk patient, if they have a very lot of fatigue, dizziness, seizure, or fainting spell, then they are exhibiting moderate symptoms, even if they don't have any other symptoms like high grade fever, or their SpO2 is okay, or they don't have any cough. So that is about the moderate symptoms. For severe symptoms, any of these moderate symptoms or any of the mild symptoms, and if the oxygen saturation has dropped below 90%, then the person is exhibiting severe symptoms. Now, these are the AIMS guideline, which is like a golden Bible, or a baseline for uh, uh, all the doctors and hospitals in India. This has been issued on 22nd of April. The key point here, they are talking a lot about the medications and the treatment that a doctor must take, or the hospital must take for different patients. But I'd like to highlight that there are three different categories that AIMS have divided the COVID-19 patient into. This is mild disease, moderate disease, and severe disease. Uh, this is slightly different from the mild, moderate, and severe symptoms I presented a slide before. And I will tie up what does mild disease, moderate disease, severe disease comes up in terms of mild, moderate, and severe symptoms. But the key point here is a person who is exhibiting mild disease, they are recommended to home isolate and they have some course of treatment. People who are exhibiting moderate disease, they are recommended to get admitted in the ward, and they have, whatever uh, therapy or whatever medicine course they have to take. That is what is mentioned. And for severe disease, the recommendation is to get admitted into the ICU. For healthy people, let's talk about the COVID-19 progression. Very important. For healthy people, people who are in age group of 60 and people who do not have any other comorbidities, no BP, no sugar, they're healthy otherwise. What happens for them? Either they would start exhibiting mild disease, or they will start with, from the onset itself, they will start exhibiting early stage of moderate disease. Now, what is mild disease? Mild disease, as I explained a few slides before, is mild symptoms, but your SpO2, very importantly, is above 94%. At this point of time, a person, when they start with just showing some fever, some cold and cough, they must understand that they are exhibiting mild disease only. Very importantly, the recommendation from doctors is you can start with generic medicines like paracetamol, dolo, cough syrup, or some steam inhalation, or something with your to do with your cold, and of course all the home remedies you'd like to do. But the key the key recommendation here is that you must not continuously eat dolo every 4 hours, 6 hours, even if you're not getting fever. Or you must actually take the reading of your fever to understand where their disease is progressing. Is it getting better or is it worsening? So very important recommendation. Other recommendation for people who are exhibiting mild disease is to not self-medicate themselves, especially with antibiotics, steroids, and blood thinners. Just because somebody in your family was being recommended these medicines, please, you must not start these medicines without a recommendation from doctor, because anyways, you are exhibiting only mild disease. Here again, the third point, we must not rush for test and HRCT. HRCT, I would like to highlight at this point of time, gives a person a radiation of up to 4,000 times of general X-ray. This is extremely harmful if taken multiple times in a particular lifetime of a person. So we must not rush for HRCT unless being asked to do so. Here, you must also mark the onset of your symptoms. For other people, what happens is if they have started with mild disease, slowly during their COVID-19 cycle, they may progress into the early stages of moderate disease. In the AIMS guideline, for the moderate disease, it has been recommended that you must get admitted into the ward. But on the from the experiences of these doctors, and of course, as I said, the AIMS guidelines are baseline. These doctors understand that even for the early stages of moderate disease, wherein somebody is exhibiting only moderate symptoms, and but their SpO2 is between 90 to 94, you may still be well, you can still treat yourself through the recommendation of doctor at home itself. So herein, the recommendation is you must not delay connecting with a doctor as soon as possible, specifically virtually. Uh, then you must adhere to the prescribed test and timelines provided by the doctor. So cases of cases, the doctors are observing that people in a family, they are not adhering to their particular timelines, but they're adhering to the family timelines. In a particular family, if multiple people are affected by this particular virus, then each will have a different onset and they will have their own individual virus cycle. But what happens when a doctor prescribes one person test on, say, a particular Wednesday, and the other person tests on a particular Friday? They observe that people, all of them will go on a Wednesday or all of them will go on a Friday. This is very harmful, because if you pre-do your test, you will give a understated values of your disease progression, and that will, your further treatment depends upon those tests. And if you delay, you are of course delaying. If you have to eat certain critical medicines at that particular time, depending upon your progression, you must start it, and it is very time critical at that point of time. So we must, on an individual level, adhere to the prescribed tests and timelines provided by a doctor. Here again, please do not rush or delay your X-rays, test, or HRCT. Another key point here, you must continuously monitor your SpO2. Every day, once or twice, you must monitor your SpO2, and your target must be above 90% all the time. Awake proning, it's a breathing exercise, laying down. There's a lot of material available in social media about how awake proning can be exercised. Awake proning is definitely encouraged, and it has shown good results with a lot of people. So as I said, a person can begin with a mild disease, they can slowly jump into the moderate disease during their cycle. And if due diligence is not even done in the early stages of the moderate disease, then people unfortunately land up into the later stages of moderate symptoms, where your SpO2 has dropped below 90 degrees. And herein the recommendation is to get admitted into the ward. The whole idea or the purpose of this particular program is to keep people, healthy people especially, in this particular green box, wherein you can home isolate, you must get your RT-PCR done, you must take enough rest, maintain proper diet, water, never panic, eat your medicines, connect with a doctor, and you can actually get well at home. You need not really go into any hospital. For high-risk people, the progression is slightly different. Not slightly, it's a lot different, I must say, Edward. So for high-risk people, people who are above the age group of 60, people who have cardiovascular hypertension or CAD, people who have diabetes, they have chronic lung, kidney, liver disease, cerebrovascular disease, obesity. Also, one more key category which the doctors would like to add into it is people who smoke a lot. These people, they do not realize that they already have some kind of compromised lungs already, even if they have not got tested. For high-risk people, key difference in progression from the healthy people is that from doctors' community, they never consider these people exhibiting mild disease. By default, they are exhibiting moderate disease. because of their previous comorbidities. However, here also we can treat people at home itself in the early stages, especially wherein a person has early stages of moderate disease where somebody has mild symptoms and their SpO2 is above 93%, or they have moderate symptoms and their SpO2 is still above 93%. Key recommendation with moderate disease as with healthy disease here also is to do not delay connecting with the doctor. You must do close monitoring. The difference here is for moderate disease, the oxygen saturation level was the target was between 90 to 94% for moderate disease, but here the thresholds are slightly down. It is above 93. We must not wait it to go till down till 90 in for high risk people, because that exhibits a lot of risk on them. Other thing is that you must, for person to person, depending upon their BP or sugar condition, they must continuously take their medicines, whatever they are taking, and they must, keep a track of their BP and sugar case to case basis. Another very key important point for high risk people is that for high risk people, the progression from stages from early, pre-early stage exhibiting mild symptoms to early stage of moderate symptoms, these progressions can actually happen very fast. So even unfortunately, if we keep a close monitor of these people at home, they may still, progress into the other stages, and that too very fast, and they may land up in the hospital. At the present scenario, or a scenario which was few days back, especially what was happening was we were losing people in the healthy category because they had landed into the later stages of moderate disease because of unavailability of these medical infrastructures. We were also losing people in high risk category. The whole idea, as I would like to emphasize once again, is we must save people, we must save lives, and that can be done if the healthy people remain in the green box, they avoid escalation of their diseases, and they get well at home and leave the precious medical resources for these medical doctors, etc., to treat high risk category people, so they can spend all their energy, all their time to treat these high risk people, so that we save lives in high risk category, we also save life in healthy category. So must do key points. Please be positive. I understand, like me, a lot of families are undergoing a lot of grief. There's a lot of panic, there's a lot of confusion, and there's a buildup of stress. But it has been medically proved that if you remain positive, any disease will not escalate. A lot of this physical health is also dependent upon the mental health of a person. So please be positive, and it will really help curing. Second important point is, please don't be in denial, rather than be in cautious that whatever if there is any symptom you're exhibiting which lies in the bucket of COVID-19, you must rather be cautious and probably think that it is COVID rather than denying that it is not COVID. It is much better to do that, especially in this pandemic, so that we don't lose time in the cycle understanding our own symptoms and understanding the progression. If we understand, if we just feel that it is COVID, then we will definitely be following a proper recommendation and we would get better soon. I would come back to the point 3 once again. Fourth point is, you must clearly understand the timelines. This is very important for the doctors to understand where in your COVID-19 cycle you are, and that is really helpful for them to make decisions on your medicines and the prescriptions. You must understand and observe your symptoms clearly. You must connect a doctor virtually as early as possible. We have a lot of methods to connect with doctors virtually because the doctors on face-to-face basis are not available. Plus, it is not very safe as well to personally go and meet a doctor just for consultation. Again, do not self-medicate, rush or delay hospital visits, perform tests and scans unless recommended. Coming back to third point, the oximeter need. The oximeter is, as we know, it is meant to measure your oxygen saturation. So we must be sitting in a very rested position, just the way probably I'm sitting at this point of time. You must be sitting for at least 10 to 15 minutes, and you must let the device sit on preferably your right hand and middle finger for a minute or so, and then your values will settle down. If your values of oxygen are fluctuating, then they haven't settled down. Let them settle down, and wait for another minute or so, and they will settle down to a value or two, something like 91, 92, 95, 96, but it would not fluctuate from 90 to 95 or 90 to 96. We have doctors on call in this session, definitely. But if any of you have still any other queries, I would post this Google form in the chat box, and you can always connect back to me and the Dr. Treem for any other doubt or query after this session. There are some other recommendations. Please get vaccinated as soon as possible, but avoid crowds. There's a star here which I'd like to mention. People who have severe immunocompromised states, people who have severe cardiovascular diseases or any other immunocompromised state, they must consult their doctors, and also pregnant women. They must consult their doctors before taking the vaccination shot. As per the recent ICMR guidelines, lactating women are allowed to take the vaccination. The immunity is low post-vaccination, so please take extra care and extra rest for 2 weeks henceforth. You must wear a mask and I would rather say a double mask, because there's a lot of theory that this particular virus is not just aerosol based, but it is also airborne. So you must wear a mask, rather a double mask, avoid crowds, and always maintain social distancing. I would like to end my presentation for today with the lines which I read from Narration in War of Words by Morgan Freeman. From the moment the invaders arrived, breathed our air, ate and drank, they were doomed. They were undone, destroyed after all of man's weapon and devices had failed, by the tiniest creature that God in his wisdom put upon this earth. By the toll of billion deaths, man had earned his immunity, his right to survive among this planet's infinite organisms. And that right is ours against all challenges. For neither do men live in vain, neither do they die in vain. Thank you all. So I would request Dr. Can I see Dr. Ruchir here?
Let me check. Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just give me a moment. Let me check with the doctor. Okay, I can address few questions if any. Meanwhile, the doctors would definitely join. Anything which anybody of you have? Sorry.
Any question? Anybody wants to ask any question? So, Payal, I have a question.
Yes.
That nowadays in news channels we are seeing that people or doctors are recommending this vaccination for pregnant women also, as in US and UK pregnant women are getting vaccinated. So
Right.
why not Indian government is taking any action against it?
So doctor, as of now, I cannot speak on behalf of the government per se, but yes, the medical fraternity is positive about giving vaccinations to pregnant women as well. And if you ask me, right now I'm in Bangalore, and there are a lot of drives that are going on. And herein, the doctors are recommending even the pregnant women to take vaccination, but there is a consent form which they are requesting the pregnant women to fill, because the government has officially not given a consent for pregnant women, but lactating women, they have already given a consent.
Okay, so it is under progress.
It is under progress, yes. I believe that there will be, the government would also depend upon the data collected and so on. So that could be a reason of uh, 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 you know, reason why these governments are not recommending. At least Indian government is not recommended. Also, the vaccinations which we are getting in India are different from what we are getting in US, right? They are getting Pfizer, Moderna. Their vaccination, the brands are different, right? They have their own studies which are being done for those vaccinations, and the vaccinations which we are taking in India, like Covishield and Covaxin, and probably Sputnik in future upcoming time, they have their own different data sets and studies done. That could be another reason.
So one question is from Sangeeta Agarwal. How long we should take multivitamin, vitamin C and zinc after mild COVID?
Right. So that's a very important question. So multivitamin, vitamin C, and zinc after mild COVID is recommended up to 3 months. This is to build your own immunity against any other future disease, future viral, bacterial, or fungal attack, which happens very, very often, especially after COVID-19, which really lowers down your barriers, immunity barriers.
Okay. Any other question? I have one more question, Par. Those who are getting COVID-19, this disease, so after recovery, how much time duration they should get, they should give before taking vaccination? So after recovering, immediately they should take vaccination or certain duration?
So this also, doctor, is actually dependent upon the government guidelines, sadly. The government at this point of time is not allowing vaccination for recent COVID recoveries up to 3 months. The reason for that is that there are studies which show that the antibodies which develop post COVID, they stay up to 3 months in your body in an reactive state. Sorry, post that they slip into non-reactive state, wherein what it means simply is your barriers start getting lower against COVID-19 strain. So probably, and of course, we all know that there is shortage of vaccination, so there's a rationing going on.
Another question from Ravinder. Nationwide cases of COVID-19 are declining now, but people are still dying of it. Yes, it makes sense that these are old serious cases, but still I want to know, is there anything or any gap we are missing on this?
Uh, People, see, for healthy people especially, if you would have read stories on stories, which I also read, people are battling COVID for 20, 25, 30 days. As I said, during their early cycle of COVID, which lasts for say 14 to 20 days, what happens is that they slip into the later stages of moderate disease. But since they're healthy, their body keeps fighting. We still have it going on and on. But they're for few they recover from those stages, but unfortunately for few they don't. So that is why we are still seeing that previous cases, we still see that there are the fatalities are still going on and on. And plus, as I said, for people who are in high risk category, sometimes irrespective of all the caution we take, this disease is actually very deadly for them anyways.
Another question from Manika Jan, ma'am. After COVID infection recovery, would you recommend antigen test?
So antigen test typically after you have recovered from COVID after 15-20 days. If you try to take this particular test, you'll get to know that you have what is your antibodies developed, etc. Typically, it is of no use, especially if you're sure that you had COVID. A lot of people, we were aware that people pass through COVID cycle with very, very mild symptoms. People who are not sure if they had COVID, and even the government, they're using this for zero surveillance. They use these antigen tests to understand how many people were affected. If the RT-PCR test came out negative, or people passed through this phase without even understanding or knowing that they were, suffering from COVID. So
Nowadays, okay, go on.
Yeah, for people who knew that they had COVID, this test has no value.
So nowadays we are listening in news channels now that prolonged COVID symptoms or prolonged COVID disease is there for 12 weeks or more than that. So what is this condition like? How to judge?
Right. So just one second. If I see if doctor is there or not, because I would like doctor to recommend this. Unfortunately, I'm really sorry about the doctor's absence today because these doctors have, I like to, first let clear out doctors' point of view. These doctors unfortunately have daily roosters and sometimes they have very strenuous 36 hours and 40 hours of shift, right? Straight 36 hours and 40 hours. And the doctor which I chatted just in the afternoon today itself was mentioning that the shift gets over at 5. So I was hopeful that they're gonna come online. Not sure though, but nevertheless I try to answer this, Dr. Anjali Sharma, but please don't quote and quote me. This is something which I heard from the doctor in another session which we conducted previously. So the prolonged COVID is not recognized in India as of now. What they believe is it's not a prolonged COVID per se. If you are exhibiting symptoms for longer time, that is because of your own immunity. It takes a little longer time, but you shouldn't be positive per se. You'd be negative after 14 days. Now after that, if you are still suffering from some kind of fever, etc., that is because of the effect that that virus has left on your body. It's not that the virus is still present in your body after 14 days. Sometimes I also went through the official ICMR, the official video channel from ICMR, wherein they were describing that there is a case wherein a false positive happens for people who just went through COVID-19 cycle. What happens is this COVID particular virus leaves RNA in your body. This RT-PCR actually detects this RNA, and sometimes even after the virus is dead, these RNAs are present, which the RT-PCR test picks up. And even after 14 days or 15 days or 18 days, the test might falsely come out, it will come out positive, giving a false indication of the virus to be present, whereas it is not a virus. Also, the other thing which doctors mentioned was that India, they do recognize multiple reinfections. For instance, in a month time frame or two, a person can actually get reinfected again if there is a different mutant of the virus the person is exposed to. So yes, the prolonged infection, they don't recognize it as of now. The prolonged effects can be there, but a reinfection is definitely possible. I hope I could clear my point on this.
Yes. Thank you so much, Payal. Is there any other question? Payal, nowadays we are also seeing that the doctors are giving steroids to treat this COVID-19 disease. But after recovering also, some people are getting heart attack and they are dying of heart attack, and doctors are saying that because of the overdosage of steroids and all. If they are under the observation of doctors, the doctors are prescribing them steroids, then how things are happening?
Yeah, so Dr. Anjali, see, what is going on is that the ICMR guidelines, if you notice, right, they are the base guidelines, if you notice, right. So there is this steroid therapy also recommended as part of it. Now, each and every doctor with their own, understanding, experience. They, by the way, as a whole, country, we are not exposed to using so many. Every person is not exposed to so many steroids in their lifetime as we are actually getting because of COVID. Now, having said that, the usage of COVID steroids, maybe not all doctors are very adequate in it, over states, over different hospitals. Doctors will have their own experience of usage of steroids. It can be less, it can be more. But yes, because of less experience or something like that, if the heavy dosage has been given, then yes, it can actually cause people, it can actually cause people severe the danger in the later stages of COVID or once they have recovered. Same thing happens even if people self-administer themselves with steroids in the early phases of COVID. In that cases also, they can see subsequent bad effect after COVID-19 recovery or something like that. The other thing I'd like to emphasize here, which through my experience I'd like to share with everybody in here, is heart attack can actually happen to people who have some kind of, they have some kind of earlier cardiovascular diseases, even if they have mild COVID. So what happens is, if your body gets less of oxygen during your COVID-19 cycle, even if it's very mildly less, then of course your heart has to do more work. And few people, they do not have even that kind of a condition to tolerate that kind of shortage of oxygen also, and they'll end up into a heart attack later on cases.
Okay. And do you have any idea about the black fungus or the white fungus disease which is being now taking toll over this COVID-19? So
Yeah.
is it because of is it the side effect of medication which is being given to the patient who are suffering from COVID, or is it something new which is coming up?
So I tell you something. Black fungus and other thing is mucormycosis. They are two different type of fungal or mold infections. What we're commonly seeing is rather mucormycosis. Actually, it gets confused with black fungus because that is also black in color. So what we are actually looking at is more commonly mucormycosis. So this happens definitely because of usage, indiscriminate usage of steroids. A very strong side effect of using steroid is sugar saturations, or your sugar levels actually fluctuates a lot. Now, people who already have some kind of sugar disease, or people who are given indiscriminate heavy dosage of steroids, which actually, kind of fluctuates their sugar levels, or your sugar goes uncontrolled, and nobody is taking medicines of sugar. For instance, a healthy person, if they are being given sugar steroids, and because of heavy steroids, the sugar, even that person doesn't know he has sugar, that person may get temporarily sugar in their COVID-19 cycle because of these steroids. And what happens is, in their low immunity, when their immunity is low because of COVID-19, typically these molds, these virus, bacterial fungus, or these infections are present in our air as well, and we actually inhale them every day. But it doesn't affect us on a general day-to-day basis, because our own body can fight against them. But when our when our immunity is very low, which really happens in COVID-19 cycle, it really drops down the immunity of a person. These particular fungal infections gets opportunity to grow within person, and when the body hosts a lot of sugar in them, it gives another added advantage for these fungal infections to grow. So because of these two cases, wherein a person who has uncontrolled sugar during their COVID-19 cycle, either because of their preconditions or because of too much usage of steroids, plus if they get into this, if they inhale, which is very usual, they can. So because of their body immunity, if it is really low, then this fungal infection, this mucormycosis, can actually grow within a person. There is a possibility of early detections of these particular mucormycosis also, which is because of if there is some kind of you have cold after your COVID cycle, or at the end of your COVID cycle you develop cold, or you have sinus developed, or you have some discharge coming from your nose, you have some kind of headache happening, and it's a severe headache. So those are some early stages of your fungal infection, mucormycosis basically. So it can be treated again on early detection. It does not progress as with COVID-19 cycle, which happens in over the duration of days. Even this mucolysis happens over days. It's not like a day or so, or like a half a day or so job. It happens over the day, and early detection can really help with some antifungal medicines, or howsoever, when if you go to a doctor, if based on your prognosis, your state, uh, antifungal infection medicines can help, and on severe cases they have to really do surgeries also.
So one more question from Dr. Manika Jain. For how long a COVID-19 recovered person should be monitored for these fungal infections?
So for fungal infections, uh, okay, this is the question which probably the doctor I should have definitely answered. I would answer from my own personal basis and my own, since a lot of people around me, I'm actually overlooking them, are undergoing these cycles. So if a person who has been given steroids with or without sugar history, they must, a person who, for both of them, I would say, you must take extra precaution for upcoming 6 weeks. And within these 6 weeks, especially for people who had COVID earlier, who had sugar earlier, they must continuously monitor at least twice a day. They should monitor their sugar levels. It should not go under out of control. You must talk to your doctor probably. If the sugar levels are high, sometimes the doctor actually increases your sugar medicines also. So for those people, you must definitely be in touch with doctor post your COVID-19 recovery. Also, for people who did not have sugar levels, high peak sugar levels, but they got steroids during their COVID-19 journey, they still must not continuously, they can probably keep a control on their sugar intake, and they can keep a control on, they can once in a while probably get their fasting as well as random sugar checked for the 6 weeks, upcoming 6 weeks.
And one more question from Akansha. After getting vaccination, is there any possibility of getting diabetic complications?
Uh, I can't answer that. I would take this up, Akanksha, and I would definitely get back to you. So if you can
And
just
should we get
antibodies check after some time in diabetes. So as I said, diabetic. If you, as I said earlier, irrespective of you were diabetic or not diabetic, if you were sure that you have got your if you're sure that you have got your RT-PCR positive, you know that your COVID was there. Antigen test these to check these antibodies doesn't provide anything else. So Akanksha, if you can just drop me your email ID, I would revert back to you on the diabetic complications. I don't want to answer anything which I have no clue about.
Okay. Is there any other question?
Akanksha, does it start with 8? 8 Akanksha?
8 akansha@gmail.com.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Akanksha. Yes, I will get back to you, Akanksha. I have actually taken a note of your question, and I will definitely write back to you. Sadly, we couldn't get our doctor today. I'm trying to reach out to the doctor, but yeah, it's a very sad thing.
That's okay. We understand the responsibilities of doctors, so they are
Yeah.
occupied.
So basically, these particular doctors are doing it only for awareness, cases on cases when they see, cases which could had been better managed at home, cases which they could, they knew they could have done something, but because of shortage of medical infrastructure, they had to refuse. That have actually taken a toll on the health and mental health of these doctors also. But yeah, the pandemic is still going on, and they have really hard duties, honestly.
So, last question from my side, Payal. How to protect small children from this disease? Like, what precautions can be taken to save them if somebody is infected at home?
For that, Dr. Anjali Sharma, if you have there are few things to be done. Uh, if you have decent size home, you can always isolate yourself, uh, 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 and you must always wear a mask. You can probably separate yourself in a room with a separate bathroom. But in a lot of cases, I do understand that is not possible. Uh, Government has quarantine centers in hospitals, government hospitals, and there are also some private quarantine centers. These are basically the beds without any oxygen support, if I can just very clearly say. These are the beds that is just used for quarantining people who have, there are a lot of people who have elderlies at home, and kids at home, and they would like to safeguard them. They actually make use of these facilities. Or else, if not that, then it has to be done at home, and you must literally isolate the person who has uh, mm, uh, who has COVID. Wear mask, double mask, perhaps sleep with the mask on when you are actually undergoing this. Unfortunately, I also went through this, and I also have a small child at my home, my own child, so I had to actually sleep with double mask, uh, and in our own small home. So yeah, that is definitely can do.
Yeah. Thank you, Payal. So is there any other question, or shall we conclude today's presentation? So I think no more questions are there, Payal.
Yeah,
So
I would probably drop the, anybody has any other doubt, I would still drop the Google form. You can please reach out. We would definitely reply back.
yes,
So I
sure.
have shared the Google form as well. Any doubt, any other question which occurs to you once this presentation is over, pre-COVID, post-COVID, with on COVID, you can definitely ask us back.
I think this presentation is useful for many of us to save many lives in futures also. Let's hope for the best. So now
Yes.
I thank you, Payal, for sparing so much of time, your precious time with us. So hoping to see so other presentations of yours in future also. So in
Thank you
that
so
note,
much.
uh, on the behalf of ARSD College, I thank you again for your time.
Thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Anji Sharma, Dr. Vinita Tole. I hope this presentation was of use to some of you at least. And I hope we all stay safe. I hope we all avoid the future surge. It's all in our hand. We must stay safe. We must safeguard, understand our symptoms, understand the progression, and safeguard ourselves and our family member from this virus.
Yes, sure. Thank you, Payal.
Thank you all.